Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Wow Ergonomics. Everybody's excited in the studio today. And what a full studio it is again, Stephen, isn't it?
It is. It's almost standing room only, isn't it, really, today? So, well, you know, I mean, two previous guests, but they're so popular, we have to keep asking them back because they've got so much to tell us that we never fit it into one show, do we?
Yes, and that you may have noticed the link between our two guests, which is the colour orange. Paul has an orange van in the background and isn't wearing a coat, and Claire has an orange coat. Is that in the background? There we are. Everybody has to get a bit of orange in when it's wow, because it's part of our colour scheme, you see. Why aren't we wearing orange?
I didn't get the email.
Well,
or you didn't, or I was left off the WhatsApp group. I'm not sure which one it was.
Also, it doesn't bring out the colour of your eyes properly, Stephen, is what they say. Yeah.
You are a charmer.
Today, we're going to be talking with Paul Skinner and Claire Henson-Bowen about a topic which is becoming ever so much more pertinent in today's world of work, which is absenteeism and presenteeism. But to begin with, let's just, for those who have never met these people before, which would be hard to believe, just get a little bit of a lowdown of who they are. So let's start with Claire. Hi. Do say who you are.
I will. Thanks for having me. So my name is Claire. I am a occupational health physiotherapist by trade, and I am CEO of Bespoke Wellbeing. So we are a occupational health provider. So we deliver sickness absence management, physiotherapy interventions, workplace assessments, functional capacity. And I've been in the business for 20 years. I know I don't look old enough, but yeah, so I've got some experience with presenteeism as well.
Oh, love that. Love that. No, you don't look old enough. I've been in the business 100 years and I don't look old enough either.
Excellent.
Paul.
I look old enough, don't I?
You walked into that one.
It was that pregnant pause that enabled that to happen.
So my name is Paul Skinner, and I help people set up. I help people with their workstations, making sure they're working as well as they can. We have a lot of problems of people working away from their traditional desks and offices, still working at home, and I can go there and help set those things up or recommend the correct things and ways of working, looking at their workflows, and just ensure people are working as safely and as well as they can be.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Now, let's start with, for people that don't actually understand the title of today's talk and what these different things are. I think most people understand absenteeism, do they not? Which is people being absent from work. Okay. Generally because they're not feeling particularly well, but that could be for a number of different reasons these days in particular, especially as we've become, I suppose, more understanding and more liberal-minded in society to some extent, and we've understood that, you know, the needs of particular people to have time off as well. I mean, back in the day when I first started work, if you had time off, you know, you'd have somebody come and, you know, chastise you. You know, it's a bit like the Four Yorkshiremen sketch, you know, lick road clean with tongue and all of that. But nowadays, we do tend to be rather a bit better with people that are working for us, and we do understand that they actually need time off. Also, there's been a lot of legal changes over the years which have enabled companies to do that, whether it hurt their bankroll or not. So is absenteeism giving way to presenteeism, though, and do we see these as very, very different problems? Presenteeism being the fact that people are turning up for work, they're there, but they're not actually present, which sounds a bit weird, really, doesn't it? But and I'm particularly interested in that, and in and around the areas of things like AI and new technologies in work as well. So. Oh, and there we are. The dog's here. I didn't even realise he was there. Claire, absenteeism, presenteeism. Where do we start on this topic? What are we seeing more of these days? You probably understand that from an occupational health point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. I think I was thinking about this before I came on. I think absenteeism is very like black and white. It's like someone's at work or they're off work. So for that individual, obviously they know where they are and what they're doing, but also like the company, the employer knows this person's off. There's a kind of, you can associate fairly closely like how much is that costing that business and things. The trouble with presenteeism, where people are coming to work where they're, you know, maybe not feeling their best, and then they're not feeling well, is it's that grey bit in the middle. It's very colourful at times, like lots of sort of fades within it. So it's really hard, therefore, to actually get a number on it. It's really hard to quantify. It's really hard to pick it up. So I think, therefore, it's then hard to manage it. So it's not easy. Are we seeing more of it? I think, I know we're probably going to talk a bit about maybe the ins and outs of it, but I think there is a big concern at the moment for many around job security and finances. So I would imagine that, yes, we are seeing more presenteeism present itself in the workplaces for a number of reasons. But I think job security and financial concerns are definitely very, very hot topic and very, very prevalent at the moment. And in your answer to your question, are they linked? They're very closely linked from my perspective, because if someone's, you know, presenting into work where they're not feeling their best, you know, the chances are they may end up becoming more unwell and then be on sort of a longer term absence. And it's sort of like a flowing thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was just going to go to Paul with that. Is that something you're picking up? And probably have always picked up in assessments, that actually someone says, "Oh, I need you to come in and see this person because they've got a bad back, or they're getting, you know, muscular pain in the back of their neck or something." But actually, when you start talking to them, it comes out that actually there's issues with the job. There's, you know, they're worried about various things. You know, there's possibly mental health issue there, or there's other issues there underlying, which probably didn't come out in that initial internal assessment.
Possibly. I think where a company's been good enough to follow up on an issue they've got, and call somebody in to do, you know, an assessment based on their workstation, then they're probably good enough to be dealing with the other things as well. And I think a lot of the time, if you tick a box and says, you know, my back hurts and, you know, I need a better chair, they go back into the same place they bought the rubbish chair from and buy a slightly better chair and think they've solved the problem. And then the guy with the backache just kind of gives up because he's got a better chair, and that's it. So probably by the time they've called me there, if there are other issues going on, hopefully they'll have got the right person to sort that out. I think everything's just too stressed at the moment, isn't it? Yeah, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. You know, with it being the way the world is, we're just trying to extract the absolute maximum out of everything now. And in some places that's good, you know, making a soup out of a chicken carcass, that's fantastic. But charging £5 for 30-minute parking is, you know, it seems excessive. But you know,
You find
it goes to the workplace as well.
Sometimes I find you go out to see people in the workplace because, you know, they've made a referral for an ergonomic assessment. They want some kit to help this person at work. They're saying their back hurts, and sometimes you see people and you just think, you just really shouldn't be here, like be at work. Like, I very, very rarely say that, but I'm just thinking of a couple of cases I saw where the person actually just couldn't even sit down. Their back and the sciatica was so bad and painful and unmanaged. And you could see they weren't sleeping. They looked really unwell. But you know, they're trying to locate a chair. I'm like, they can't even, you know, get into that degree of position to sit on anything. So I don't know if you've experienced that.
Yeah, I have. I guess I have sometimes. Yeah. I had a lady once. She wasn't. You know, it usually gets to the point where they then, you know, the colleague has got so stressed and in so much pain they take the time off, and then the employer is going, maybe I do need to spend the money. The employer is thinking, maybe I do need to spend the money on a decent chair, and then they don't realize just how much you can do just with a simple chair if you really look at it with somebody who knows what they're talking about. So I think a lot of that's just ignorance. People don't, you know, just sometimes just putting an ergo core cell into a chair that balances out an imbalanced pelvis, sorted out, you know, someone fell off their horse, smashed their pelvis, they haven't been comfortable for years, but they don't really realize how much you can do about it. But it takes a while to get to that point sometimes.
I think one of the things you said at the start, Graham, was about what's the difference between the two and understanding. And Claire, you said about almost the black and white and grey element. I wonder if that plays a big part in it, because we often talk about the C-suite and management and understanding of how they manage these things. I guess with absenteeism, it's quite straightforward, because it could be, you know, this person attended 83% of the time or 94% of the time. So it's this hard figures you can put. I mean, not that people clock in as much anymore. Maybe in a factory environment, potentially you clock in and clock out, or a manufacturing. But I guess with that, it's quite easy to quantify in terms of numbers. As Claire said, how do you put a number on presenteeism and present it to the board or senior management? Say, how do we address this? Because I can imagine the first question coming back is, give me the number. What's the scale? What's the problem?
I think that's the biggest differential, is that with absenteeism, it will be part of policy. It will be part of contract. It will be in black and white somewhere, right? You are, this is our policy around you being absent from work, and this is what we will do if you are absent from work. This is when we, there's a legality to it, which forms the basis of that, which is that, if you're off work for X amount of days, you've got to have a doctor's note. You've got to let us know what's going on, and there will be in policies, internal policies, there will be, this is the return to work procedure, and this is the kind of adjustment procedure around it, soft adjustments, harder adjustments, etc. as well. So that side of things, it's the presenteeism bit. How do you write a document for that? How do you write a document for I'm disengaged at work?
I think they're very closely linked, and my perspective is that it wouldn't take too much. A lot of employers are talking about being proactive. We're looking at, like, for physiotherapy, for example, someone injures their back, early intervention being that sort of early access or preventative, hopefully, strategies. But if you think about someone who's, we'll go with the back pain, they've hurt their back, they go off sick, they're off for 6 weeks, and then we're trying to get them back to work. Maybe they've been seen by occupational health, maybe Paul's come and seen them and helped them with their equipment, and we're saying, okay, they can come back on a phased return of duties, making some adjustments for them temporarily just to help them back in. My feeling is if we can create, organizational kind of culture where you can have these transparent conversations. It's a very similar approach in a way. You've got an employee, maybe they pull their back playing football at the weekend, they're not feeling their best, but they're happy to come to work and they feel they want to work. But can they have those open conversations? Is there some reasonable adjustment that can be put in place? Maybe they work from home for a week or two. Maybe they don't go out to meetings and carry the kits just for a couple of weeks while things settle down, early access to physio, and then it kind of settles and we move on. So I don't think it would take much, but it is that grey part. And you're right, it isn't often in policy. And policies are great because it helps managers and organisations know how to treat people fairly. Everyone knows where they stand. But for me, it's that same approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. We've got a real life example here for us to now deal with. Okay. So Melanie Costas, I had an OC health assessment and was told I needed to take a break from my desk to do exercises every 30 minutes or so. For a few minutes, my manager asked me how I was going to make the time up. This often happens, by the way. Of course, I went to my union, they put her straight that I'm disabled and it's a reasonable adjustment and there'd be no paying back time or anything else. But there's always that rub, I find, between KPIs, the commercial idea of, if somebody's not at their desk doing something, then they're costing the company money. Against, like, the best advice to make sure that person can be, when they are working, present. Because if you're in a lot of pain, sat at your desk, you're not going to be working particularly productively, are you? Because you're going to be thinking about the pain rather than the work. And it's how do we, I think in ideal worlds, we think we put these policies in place, or we put these things like soft adjustments in place, take 30-minute breaks, go and do this. Stephen, Paul, Claire, you've probably all had those conversations with line managers where they go, yeah, but what am I meant to do about that? I can put that in place, but that's going to affect the scores. What can I do about that? Yeah, Stephen, you must have seen that from time to time when you've been talking to people.
I think so, and I think what's really interesting there is what's sort of coming through again is that numbers, that ability to measure something, isn't it? We talked about the ability to measure absenteeism and presenteeism, and actually those KPI bits, the numbers are sort of causing the problem, because people are sort of following the numbers, but the numbers are causing a problem because, I don't know, whether it's a call center or something, you maybe need to be available for 6 hours with the calls a day, but you need to have 5 hours because you need 2 half-an-hour additional breaks. The numbers are causing the problem, aren't they? Numbers are great because they give us information, but do they then add to the problem because people are then judged against them? So that's the really difficult part. And I guess it goes back up the line, is how do you make people higher up understand that someone may be only doing 5 hours of calls a day and not 6, but the quality of those 5 hours is so much better because they're not doing 6, and getting people to understand that.
Yeah. I think the other issue is the quality of the amount of time we give people in trying to find out what the problems actually are as well. And the process. I actually quite often blame our industry as well in terms of some of the ways that we do things, right? I've talked about on here in the past, I've given a couple of really good examples. One example was where I was asked to go in and see this guy. He'd had 3 assessments already. He'd been offered a height adjustable desk. He'd been offered a different chair. He'd been offered this, that, and he had all of these different things thrown at him in terms of equipment. What nobody had actually done is ask what was going on in his life. So they'd followed a tick box kind of affair, and they tried to put it right. I discovered that he was homeless. He was turning up for work every day, but he'd lost his home. That was the main thing that was impacting him. At that point, then we could get occupational health involved, and then we could start to deal with the root of the problem. I had another example, which we've talked about on here several times, where I went to see someone working in a bank. Again, they kept trying to throw ergonomics at it, as it were, by saying, right, it must be something to do with her desk. It must be something and she had a dietary problem. She was living off McDonald's, right? That's why she was falling asleep in the middle of the afternoon, because her whole diet was sugar. How much of the problem, Claire, is the fact we perhaps just don't allow people to have really deep conversations with people to actually find out what's the problem?
You hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, people, it like everything, it comes back down to organizational culture and having good empathetic line managers that take the time to listen. It should be in a private room, opportunity to really have those conversations and to understand, but both ways. So if the manager's concerned, in the example you just gave, if the manager's concerned about productivity, just having those discussions with that employee, go through the OH report. I've been to many workplace assessments, and what's on the referral, as soon as you start talking to the manager, HR, the employee, they're all on different pages. And so sometimes our job is to slightly bring them back into one place and go, this is where we are. And I think just looking at your example there, I think it's tricky for line managers and for organisations. We do have to have the numbers. We do have to have the policies and processes in place. And I think sometimes managers don't get enough support and training themselves. And perhaps in that example you just gave, the manager wasn't aware around the Equality Act, how to support someone with a disability in the workplace, reasonable adjustments and things like that. So I think sometimes managers walk in to situations and perhaps say the wrong things, and then they're told to backpedal by HR. But that lady's example straight away is going to make probably make her feel like she's not being cared for, that, you know, what's been recommended for her is just not even being considered. But if you can get in a room, you know, confidentially, have a nice conversation, listen, be empathetic, and then just troubleshoot, okay, we might struggle to do it. That example, unless you're really, like you say, Stephen, tied down to a role where it's like you have to make this many calls in this many minutes, you know, people can have wireless headsets, they can have sit stand up, they can move, you know, it's about what that organization can reasonably support and put into place, and how long is that a forever thing, is that for a few weeks? And, you know, they have to be very confident that they can stand up in a tribunal if it should ever get to that point and justify why they didn't do it. So you have to be quite careful, and I think, you know, that's why I kind of come back to line managers, making sure they've been trained and they've got support and they know what the policies are, they know where the parameters are, what can they do to support people, and having that mindset shift rather than just being very like confrontational. Well, we can't support that. No, we're not doing it. You know, everyone would want a break every 30 minutes, but actually spinning it around and going, okay, I've got someone here that wants to work. They've, you know, they're not well at the moment, or maybe they've got a long-term disability. How can we support this person reasonably? And I think having that culture and that mindset shift is what's needed.
Yeah, that mindset shift, it's about creating a more human environment right from the start. I think the problem is that there's often, however much we'd like to think that the rhetoric that comes out of some C-suite's mouth about, you know, how much we're a people-based business and whatever, ultimately they are there to make money, you know, and the problem seems to be there's often an actual disconnect between the culture that they are actually building and the one that they're talking about building. You know, because externally they want to say that we love people, we do things for our people, our people love working for us. We saw that quite famously, sort of just after the COVID period, when everybody was just really beginning to, you know, kind of push that agenda, and there were some massive blunders made where. And I won't name the company, but there was one particular company on LinkedIn that the boss of this company kept appearing on LinkedIn, and he was like, yeah, look at what we're doing for, you know, the culture, the people. You probably know who I'm talking about. And then suddenly one of the people that worked for him went, yeah, that's a lie. None of that happens. And it kind of crept out in the news. And he had to like retract and turn up and say, yeah, actually, I've messed up here. You know, what I was saying and what actually happened. Well, there's a difference in there. You know, it becomes marketing speak almost, that we are a people-based business, but in reality, they're about chasing money, chasing profits, chasing the bottom line. I think that's always going to be the problem. You know, getting the two of those to come together. Melanie's commented again. She said, a different employer. My manager was happy for me to work around my back pain and self-manage because she trust, big thing here.
Yeah, big word.
Right, which I did. Sadly, she retired. Then I got a manager who was very narrow-minded and had some fixed, rather ableist attitudes. I think the main issue is that most employers have very little awareness of what is or isn't a disability. I'd go beyond that. I think sometimes in organisations we're seeing people do awareness training, but I think there's a big difference between in-person awareness training, especially around disabilities, etc., and just ticking boxes online. But I also think that probably where a lot of people need to start with is emotional awareness training, because I just think some management just don't have that ability to be emotionally aware.
I mean, it's very sad, isn't it, if you can be in one organisation and just a manager change can have such a profound impact on an individual and on a team, which is why it's just so important that organisations recruit well into management leadership roles and that they are trained and supported. And I think that emotional intelligence and empathy, you know, there's skills that managers need to have. I have a few guilty pleasures of things I like to watch, and one of them is Undercover Boss. I don't know if you've seen that one, where the boss goes undercover on and some moustache, and you know, they see on the ground, you know, what's actually happening.
He's horrible.
Yeah, wow. You know, some people doing very well within the company, and then others that are, you know, don't like calling them rotten apples, but you know, ones in the company that are just very difficult to work with and be managed by, or whatever it might be. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah,
I read the comment that, you know, as you were reading Melanie's example out, I'd seen it come up, Graham, and my instant reaction when I saw it was, oh, that's on the new boss. But actually, when you take a step back, it's actually on the company for allowing that to happen. How have you gone from a line manager who was so empathetic to someone who is so unempathetic, and it's allowed to take place? Where was the training when that new manager came in to say, you have someone in your team who has this, we've put this in place for them through their previous manager, you need to make sure it carries on? Well, clearly it hasn't. So you know what I mean?
Being a skeptic,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
you know, that the decision was a commercial decision up above. Maybe the commercial decision was, actually, we want to bring someone in that's going to make sure people perform. Now,
I
Yeah.
was going to say, from Melanie, it was Melanie, wasn't it? I would say from Melanie's perspective, she's got, you know, occupational health support. She said she had a disability. Maybe she would likely be covered under the Scope of the Equality Act. But I would say to Melanie, maybe not challenge is the wrong word, but I would say, well, has there been this has been my supporting my reasonable adjustments for X amount of time. I've not been made aware of any performance concerns. I haven't been under any capabilities, any performance watches or anything. Like, I've been hitting all my targets with these adjustments, for example. So then if a new manager's coming in and saying, no, we can't implement those, we can't support them, I would maybe, like you say, if actually it doesn't impair performance, there isn't really how would you defend not then?
she's just made another point. By the way, for people that don't know here, Melanie is actually a disability inclusion expert. So that kind of put things into perspective. But she's mentioning a figure here, which I think is really important to continuing this conversation, which is, it's probably why only about 4% of employees officially self-identify. You know, and I just wanted to come over to that with you, Paul. How many times when you see people, have you ever had someone say, oh, just don't mention that, don't put that in the report or whatever? Have you ever had that? Because I had that so many times that someone doesn't want to, they're happy for you to deal with the fact that they've got a bit of a bad back, or, you know, they've been suffering with pain in their arm or whatever, but there might be something else that's underlying. They don't want that mentioned because they feel that will have an impact on their job.
Maybe I've not come across it much, but I think that would probably be more of a problem. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think if you work in larger companies, maybe that sort of starts to become a bit of a problem. Whereas most of my work's with fairly small companies where they probably know each other a lot better anyhow.
Yeah.
But again, but as you say, although it's smaller companies, it actually sounds like smaller companies therefore have better relationships and better conversations.
Well, so you know, and just to bring in, you know, not to want to change the subject, but it is working from, you know, what we're talking about here is culture, isn't it? And it's easy, you know, some people confuse stuff and slogans with culture, which is not. Culture is what we do, not what we say or what we buy. And I think is it harder to grow a culture, the culture you want, if everybody's out working from home?
That's an interesting point. Claire, a whole sort of remote working, or the change in how we work, how's that had an impact on all of this in terms of, I mean, you know, actually, have we seen that it's better for people if they've got that ability to choose where they work? Or has it made it harder for management to actually keep tabs on both of these things, absenteeism and presenteeism in the workplace?
It's tricky. It's a funny old landscape, isn't it? Because obviously through COVID, everyone went home, and then some people came back 2 days a week, and then you hear stories now where, you know, without much notice, organisations like, right, you're coming back full time, and people have sort of adapted their lives a bit to get used to, you know, be hybrid working or home-based working. So it does upset people, and I think a lot of people that we kind of touch base with and see that maybe do have long-term health conditions, disabilities, they often do find, a lot of them that I speak to, they find working from home has been beneficial to them to like self-manage, do their exercises, have that slight flexibility and that kind of freedom, not commuting if there's a physical kind of element to their health condition. Again, I think Paul mentioned the word, someone mentioned the word trust. I think when you start saying keeping tabs on people, and you do hear managers say that I can't keep tabs on them if they're at home, it's like, well, you either trust your staff or you don't trust your staff. And I think it comes back to that that culture piece. With relation to presenteeism, I would imagine you maybe with those sort of remote working roles, desk-based roles, you probably get people maybe still working when they're not feeling their best because they don't have to get into an office. But potentially you might see a bit more of that, and they might, I'll just do what I can from home in that perspective. But
so does that mean, Clay, just thinking about what you've said there, is that presenteeism potentially is higher where you've got people working from home, and absenteeism is potentially high where companies have got people who've got to physically go in? Do you think, as you say, do you think if someone can't go in, they'll obviously, let's say for example, someone working in an office 5 days a week, they physically can't go in, they don't feel well enough, they ring in sick, and therefore you'd classify that as absenteeism. If that person worked in a role where they'd work from home, it would then be presenteeism, because they'd carry on. Oh, I'll just do an hour here and an hour there. So you throw that home working versus office into the equation, and it then starts sort of looking completely different, doesn't it? Really, is presenteeism or absenteeism higher if the company has office workers versus home workers? So there's lots of things go in the whole melting pot.
So many variables. I think as well, it's things like infectious things. So, if you've got a rattling cough and you go into the office, everyone's going to be like, keep away from me. Whereas you might work from home. Okay, I don't feel the best. I'll have some paracetamol. I'm coughing away. Maybe I'll just adjust some of my calls. So I'm not coughing down the phone at people. But potentially. And then, but you do still see people, dragging their leg behind them, trying to get to work into physical roles. But if you physically, you're physically can't do your active role, a non-desk-based role, it's going to be a lot harder to manage, isn't it, to get into the workplace and do those tasks.
And I wonder if companies and you sort of start going into this conversation and think about more and more things, but actually then companies probably, in some cases, presenteeism might be okay to some companies, because rather than having someone doing zero work, absenteeism, they'd rather someone did 30% of work and it was presenteeism. So you've then got to think about that. Does some companies go, actually, we'll put up with a bit of presenteeism because the alternative to it would be absenteeism, and at least we get something out of them? Do you know what I mean? I wonder if that within certain companies and certain cultures becomes a thought process.
Well, I'm going to throw another spanner into the equation now, okay? Because I'm going to talk about one of my favourite subjects, which is the introduction of AI into the work culture, okay? Because with that, and we've seen some very important public cases on this where people have literally not thought about what they're doing at all. And they've had a report come down to them, they've plugged it into AI, because they're time poor, all right, and partly because they have become disengaged from the role. They've plugged it into AI, they've asked it to do something, it's got sent back up. That person hasn't looked at it properly, they've just put it into AI, they've sent it back up, it's gone to the top. And then because the first person was using a microphone to talk to AI, and their kids' TV was in the background, Barney Bear was in the middle of this amazing report, all right? And the chief commissioner at the top was looking at it and going, why have I got this gobbledygook at my desk? Now, that's becoming a real problem. But I think AI then actually creates an even bigger problem for trying to measure this stuff, right? Because who's doing the work now as well? Who's actually doing the work? Is it the person that sat there, or is, this thing in the cloud doing the work, and actually this person can kind of take themselves away from it because they're just pressing the buttons, and that enables them to kind of detach themselves. I liked what I heard one culture specialist talking about the other day, which is actually we should get away from all of these old systems of measuring output, and we should actually start to measure impact instead. Right?
Okay.
So in other words, KPIs, old-fashioned system, etc. It's like, how much of this are you doing? Right? How many of these have you done? As opposed to, let's as a company go, has your contribution here made an impact to actually how this company is progressing? Because actually sometimes when you just chase figures, you don't actually do work properly. You know, you actually start to go, well, I've got 10 of these to do, and I'm going to do each of them really badly in order to get the 10 off my desk, because that's how someone's measuring me. Whereas actually, if you looked at it and went, I've made a real impact to where this company is going to go from a proper objective point of view, but at the end of the month, and how I've done it and in what time I've done it doesn't really matter. It's the impact that's getting measured, not the figures. I mean, obviously there are jobs where you know, the output is important, right? I went to the Rattlers factory while I was down in Cornwall. I mean, if you're producing bottles of Rattlers, right, and people are thirsty at the other end of the you know, the tap, you basically have got to get so many bottles out. Yeah, there's some jobs that are always going to be that kind of, you know, figure-based thing, but ultimately there's a lot of work now which is data pushing and, you know, data management and actually stuff where we should be thinking about stuff. Surely that could be moved more to an impact-based look at it. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I was going to say for Paul, actually, because Paul obviously is said a lot of the work and companies he engaged with are sort of smaller companies. What sort of impact are you seeing within your sort of customer base or people you see around AI, and how does that tie in with what Graham's talking about, Paul? Or is AI just seen as, oh, it's for the big companies? What's the sort of the view?
I think that it's really early days, isn't it? I mean, you know, and I'm a good example. It's not like I'm scared of it. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm not techie. I understand that there are a lot of things I could do with it and should be doing with it. I've got no, you know, unless I go and give some, you know, I'm not convinced that we're there yet, that the hundreds of pounds I would have to give somebody to do it for me is going to actually return me something. Although Graham's point that if I just looked at the impact rather than the output, then maybe I should think differently about that. You know, the world doesn't know what to do with it yet. It's still working it out. It's interesting, but I'm not scared of it. I'm not avoiding it. I'm not ready for it yet.
Claire, do you see that it could well have an impact in terms of sort of disengagement from roles?
I mean, I'd agree with Paul. I mean, I think we're not really, it's coming very fast, isn't it? And I think maybe the bigger companies have grabbed it with both hands a bit quicker. I'm still definitely getting used to it. But I think organisations are obviously using it to create efficiencies. And we're also using it sometimes with health conditions and disabilities to help people do their job roles. But I think companies are savvy. You know, it's just a tough economical climate out there. AI is not free. The tools are not all free. You know, their cost involved. So I think companies that are starting to bring them in, and they obviously have to do all their data governance stuff to bring it into the company, you know, and they're paying for subscriptions or whatever else for staff to be using things. But they're doing it to create efficiencies, and then they'll be maybe upping other KPIs or other productivity measures. You know, for example, in healthcare, you know, a lot of places are starting to use it to help write clinical notes and to help write reports. If they used to get an hour for the assessment and half an hour report writing, they're now going to get an hour to do everything because actually the AI is doing it. So they're trimming, they're investing to create efficiencies. I don't know time will tell, I think, around that kind of disengagement piece. I
mean, there was an article this morning that they're saying that I think, is it Meta or Facebook, however we know it, is reducing its workforce by 8,000 people, which is 10%, because they're investing billions into AI, and there's very much a quantifiable impact of people there, isn't there? So I guess always the big concern with AI is it going to put so many people out of jobs that the economy then can't function because there aren't enough roles for people to do. You start seeing numbers like 10% and 8,000 and billions. They're really big numbers, and they will eventually start trickling their way down, won't they, from the big boys all the way down?
100%. They really will. Catherine, thank you for responding to that thing that I said about impact. Yeah, I totally agree. It does have to be quantifiable. You have to find a way of quantifying it, but we do have systems that are perhaps more akin to making those things quantifiable as opposed to KPIs. Every time I hear companies talking about KPIs, I think there are potentially different systems. I mean, even OKR systems for measurement are probably better than KPIs. What are our objectives as a business? What are the key results that collectively as a team we can create that will make those objectives happen, as opposed to give that individual 10 tasks to do, and if they've done the 10 tasks, then that means that the work's been done. So yeah, I agree with you. It is what I'm saying there. It's efficiency and deliverability is what gets rewarded, as opposed to I've just done something. And I am worried about the way that AI is being sold to people as well. I mean, I'm worried when I see adverts which have got like two young women talking in an office saying, oh, what should we do today? Oh, we don't need to do the work. We can just decide what colour to paint our nails and which coffee we should have. Should we have a macchiato or should we have a latte? Because we've got AI in now and that's going to allow us to do the work. My main concern is that, and culturally, when I'm talking to businesses, there is a big difference between those who are setting boundaries, setting procedure for use of AI and are training staff on AI, and those that are just allowing AI to permeate into their business without any kind of control over it. What we're tending to see is, so I had a chat with a consultant yesterday who's working in the NHS. He's saying they're doing quite a good job of that training piece and that policy piece around AI because they have to, because they're dealing with medical data. But there will be a lot of businesses who are literally just using this stuff and they're not actually even talking to their staff about how are you using this? What are you using this for? And then what are you gaining in terms of productivity and time? And how can we use that time more efficiently for you to be a brilliant human? Because that's what we need to get back to. If we're going to use AI in a very productive way, then we've got to allow humans to do really human stuff really well. But if we don't give them the time for that, we're kind of defeating the point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think like some job roles are going to be taken over. Well, they're going to be taken. There's a list, isn't there, of the roles that are most likely to be taken over first. So I think if we don't keep hold of that human piece, that's where it's going to get.
Were Graham and I on that list, Claire? Do you know, naming
What's your
people by
names?
name?
You were like,
yeah.
Hope we were way down the list.
No, I think that I've been speaking out quite a lot about people that do copywriting, for example. I think copywriting from people will disappear at some point. I don't think there will be many people doing copywriting jobs because I think AI will do a very good job of learning how to write in a more human way. It's just that is just a matter of time. At the moment, it still feels a lot of the output still feels a bit stilted and inhuman or clear. I've been doing some really interesting tests on LinkedIn, for example, posting some stuff written on AI and some stuff written by me or other people, and seeing what the algorithm actually responds to best. We're told by the platform that it responds best to human value. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It
responds to cats.
Yes. Well, I feel that is when you see that kind of entertainment grab content on social media now, that's us as humans struggling with the fact that we're losing control here. That's what that is. It's us saying, what do we need to do to get engagement? But there's a big gap between engagement and quality and value, right? you know, I think the future for social media is not social media. But that's a different topic for a different day. But I think the world of work is going to change drastically over the next 10 years. And I think we just have to, what we do need to do though, is within that, especially as this sector, is we need to come back to, are you as organisations, when this is happening, are you coming back to how you can support people in your organisation to be doing stuff that's very fulfilling for them as people as well? That becomes an important part of it. I mean, both Paul, Claire, would you say there is some correlation between if somebody enjoys their job, that they tend to be, you know, whatever disability they might have or whatever illness they might have, they seem to cope better at work because they enjoy what they're doing?
Definitely.
Of course, yeah.
Very closely linked. I think, again, it comes back to like the culture and how people like feel in their jobs, and people know what kind of employer they work for and how they're treated and how they're kind of made to feel by their employer, by their managers, but by their peers and by their team. And I think if they really enjoy the job, they get, you know, good satisfaction from it, and they like who they work with. They will not want to, there's a lot of people that are very stoic, they don't want to let people down, and they get a real sense of purpose from being in the workplace. I've also had people who have, you know, other kind of social or caring responsibilities outside of work, and actually the workplace is their place of kind of respite. So if they might not be feeling the best themselves, for them it's just so important that they keep going and they come into work and they continue working. But I think if they enjoy the job, you potentially are going to get a bit more presenteeism, but then hopefully they've got good line management, good, you know, organizational culture where they can have those conversations and say, actually, I'm not feeling great this week, my back's playing up. Can we just have a look at some adjustments just for a week or two whilst it settles down, and then it moves on.
Yeah. Where do you think this sits within the sort of line of, we are moving away from work-life balance to kind of life and work is integrated completely now? Where do you think that sits in all of this conversation about absenteeism and presenteeism? Because again, I think that's something that started to really blur during COVID when people were working from home. You know, I think people are looking for work now if they can get it. I think people are looking for something which they enjoy, and therefore actually, because like life is so busy now with different things, and I think there's not necessarily the family support systems that there used to be because everybody's working. You know, that it's very difficult to say when the clock starts and when the clock doesn't anymore. I mean, you know, the whole idea of work-life balance was, you know, if you're going to work hard, you kind of need to play hard as well, if you like. You need to make sure that you're taking time away from work or whatever. Now, and especially because of phones being where you can do most of your work now, I think most people are kind of on 24/7 but off 24/7 as well. I think it's about trying to find that balance during the day for you having time where you're not necessarily, you know, doing that work thing. But equally, I know a lot of people that say, well, they actually just love work, and it just you know, that actually relaxes them. So yeah, do you find that's a big part of this as well?
It's all blurred, isn't it? It's all blurred. You know, I used to have a proper job. I used to have to go to work at a certain time to a certain desk and do what I was
You've got a
told
proper
to do.
job.
I had a proper job, yeah.
You've got one now.
And then, you know, 10 hours later, I'd go home again, and then I had a couple of hours to do the bits of life that I wanted to do, and the bit that I didn't, and then it repeated. Whereas now, you know, if a customer phones me up now and says, "Can I see you in the showroom at 2:00?" I'll be, "Yeah, great. I can have a swim on the way." And you know, that would be the difficulty now if I had to have another proper job again. People telling me where I've got to be and when I've got to be there for their 10 hours of my day. That would, you know, I'll do all the work, but I'll do it when I want to do it and how I want to do it.
Absolutely.
But that goes back to what you were saying, Graham, about measuring impact rather than just simply output. Tell me what you want done, when you want it done by, and I will do it. But I'm not going to do it sitting at that desk for 8 hours a day. It's not happening.
No. I'm glad you've spotted that comment, Graham, that Phil Johns has put on. I thought, I read it and thought, I'm going to hope he's picked up and seen it out the corner of his eye. And he's on mute because the dog.
It was the dog that spotted it and barked to tell me. Yeah, because I've trained my dog a bit like AI in order to spot the comments. Okay, so yeah, went to a network meeting this morning. I was told that a company that have introduced online AI training, which informs the staff during the training that they expect a percentage of their jobs to be lost to AI in the future. Advising the staff to continue with the training as it may open other opportunities for them in the future. Wow. Yeah, I mean, this is.
I mean, there's being honest and there's.
But
laying it out there
being honest. Well, I guess what they were trying to say is that the future is about retraining and upskilling and taking you in taking people in a different direction.
Don't skip the training, in other words.
No, absolutely. But that's difficult, isn't it? Because again, if that's one message, it's about, well, how's that going to land with different people, right? I deal with a lot of clients who've got ADHD and RSD, etc. If you tell someone with RSD that might be the only thing they can think of from now on in.
Yeah.
Right. So I when you put this stuff out there, are you thinking about how this communication out there? Are you thinking about how that's going to land?
I was thinking exactly the same thing. Was there a neurodivergence considerance when that message went out? Was someone thinking about those? It could be 2 or 3 people, and specifically, this could really, really have a big impact. It almost feels like there wasn't the consideration. It was a bit sort of across the board. There you go, get on with it. So,
yeah. I mean, if you throw
that's the sort of thing I would have said.
Well,
that's why if I had a proper job, I'd have to employ people to do the communication thing.
Yeah,
because what's right and what you should say are not always the same thing.
Well, I mean, you're bringing me around to another of my favourite subjects, which is communication. I think as things move forward, actually, we are going to need to. Companies are going to need to learn how they communicate a lot better, right? And I think it sounds really kind of cheesy, but. We're a big company. Of course, we know how to communicate. I've been doing some comms work in some organisations recently, and I can tell you a lot of big organisations don't know how to communicate. They clearly think that they do, but actually, when you get under the hood, they don't. And I think it becomes, when work has become so busy and it's become so kind of defragmented as well. And you've got all of these technologies involved, actually that communication bit gets lost really really quickly, and it causes big problems. That's the kind of thing that just could have been dealt with so differently, couldn't it? It could have been just like, let's take you on this journey with us, and this is a progressive journey. This is exciting. This is where we're going, etc. Not necessarily lying, but at least allowing people to see the opportunity rather than necessarily see the negative. What a big conversation today. Thank you so much. Wow,
it was.
And we didn't even mention the new chair which is on the market, which doesn't have a lumbar support. We've all seen that. Right. Anyone want to a 2-minute mention of that, or shall we leave it for another time?
I'm not saying anything about it until I've seen it.
That, my friend, is very, very sensible. Claire, have you seen it?
No.
You haven't seen it? I'll send you a link to it afterwards.
Yeah.
It's been
Paul's got other things on his mind at the moment. He's got a visitor, hasn't he? Those of us who've read LinkedIn this morning, he has a house guest that maybe is distracting him from lumberless chairs.
No, she needs a lot of lumber. She needs a lot of lumber, that lady.
Yeah.
I need to go and see your page. I have no context.
Paul's brother's come to stay.
I think it's important. That people keep trying to push the boundaries of new technologies and new ways of doing things. Some ergonomic based solutions seem to have been around for decades, and you do think like with the the fact that work is changing and the way that work's changing, like some of it needs to be re-looked at. So it's good, but I think what we need to always be careful of, and I'll throw this to whoever is inventing anything new out there, is that don't necessarily come out and say it's the right thing, because that kind of goes against ergonomics, really. Because if it's the right thing for one person, it's probably not the right thing for somebody else.
Absolutely.
You know, that's marketing speak, saying this is the right thing for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, never will be, never will be. We will be back next month with another group of fabulous guests to talk about more of this, what goes on in the workplace and how we can support people. Thank you to everybody that's commented today. It's been fantastic to have some great comments in the middle of this, and we hope to see you next time. But until then, from all of us plus the dog, bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.